Hi, thanks for joining the webinar today. This is one of our Make Your Mark webinars, part of our Make Your Mark series. And this week we're going to be talking about sustainability in construction. And we're joined by three amazing speakers who are going to tell us more about what they've been doing in this space and why it's so important. They are Philippa Birch-Wood, Thrive Director at Chetwoods, Adrian Shah-Cundy, who is Corporate Responsibility Director at VolkerWessels UK, and Naomi Warr, Group Environmental Manager at Mclaren Construction. And I'm just going to hand over to them to do a brief friendly hello and introduction so you can hear a bit more from them. And then they'll talk in more detail about what they've been up to shortly. Maybe Philippa, if we could start with you.
Yeah, sure. So as Kendall said, I'm Thrive Director at Chetwoods, an architect's practice. I also have a seconded role at the UK Green Building Council representing the West Midlands. I am currently Sustainability Champion for GLP, a logistics developer. So I'll be talking through how we make sustainability simple for clients and hopefully build back better.
Amazing. Thanks, Philippa. And then Naomi?
Hi, yeah, I'm Naomi Warr. I'm the Group Environmental Manager for Mclaren Construction. I've got 20 years experience in the construction industry in various advisory, management and consultancy roles. I'm going to be telling you a little bit today about Mclaren's journey on the sustainability strategy that we're currently moving forwards on.
Thanks, Naomi. Amazing. And then Adrian. Hello.
Good morning, everyone. Adrian Shah-Cundy, so I'm Corporate Responsibility Director at VolkerWessels UK. So originally an ecologist by background, but I've been in construction for 25 years and 15 of those with the VolkerWessels UK in my current role, with oversight of sustainability, but some other aspects around corporate governance, including health and safety. But yes, I'm going to talk to you today around our journey on sustainability and some of our current strategies and challenges.
Amazing. Thanks, Adrian. Really looking forward to hearing more about that in a minute. Adrian's going to be our first speaker, so we'll be hearing more from him in a second. For those of you who maybe are new to the Planet Mark, just to give you a little bit of background. So the Planet Mark is a sustainability certification. We have a unique three-step process of measure, engage and communicate. And we really focus on getting the best out of people, technology and nature. And we truly believe that only by getting the best out of those three things can we solve the climate crisis. So that's just a little bit of background on us and who we are. Before we get started today and get stuck into the interesting stuff, just a bit of housekeeping. So you'll have joined with no video and on mute, that's fine. You'll have an opportunity to say hello if you want to in the chat function. There should be a little icon at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to say hello. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. So there'll be a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Please put any questions in there. I'm going to have 15 minutes at the end for questions. So we'll make sure that we have a chunk of time to get through those. But if you see anybody asking questions that you would also like to know the answer to, you can upvote on those questions, and that'll make sure they get bumped to the top of the list and the most popular questions get answered first. So yeah, any questions in there, please? In terms of a very quick agenda, we've done an introduction. Then we're going to hear from Adrian, and he's going to do a bit of scene setting for us and tell us more about what they've been up to at VolkerWessels UK. Then we'll hear from Philippa about what's been going on at Chetwoods and as part of Thrive. And then Naomi will tell us more about what they've been up to at Mclaren Construction. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have 15 minutes at the end for Q&A and closing remarks. The only other thing to mention at this stage is we're going to run an optional 30-minute networking session straight after the webinar. So if you'd like to do that, I'll launch a poll at the end to gauge interest. And then if enough of us want to go on and have a chat, we can move over to the networking session, also in Zoom, but I'll share a link to that at the end. And then I think that's everything from me. So it's over to you, Adrian, and just let me know when you want me to move on with the slides.
Thanks, Kendall. Hello again. So we just go to the first slide. So obviously I'm warm-up act for today. wait for the slides to come up. Whilst they are, perhaps just a bit about VolkerWessels UK. So we're a UK group of construction companies. We are owned by a Dutch parent. We turn somewhere in the region of about £1 billion every year with 3,500 staff and probably 5,000 contractors on the ground at any one time. We work across all aspects of construction, from heavy civil engineering to buildings, road, rail, marine, offshore. I used to say we did everything bar housing, but we just started doing that as well. So I can't use that explanation anymore. Simply just to start, the session today was very much around the importance of reducing environmental impact in construction and the part that credentials play in that. But I thought I'd start with sort of like the framing piece about the why. So next slide, please, Kendall. So I'd like to think that everyone on the call is familiar with the SDGs, and it's pleasing to see, if you look around the construction companies, look around their websites, although organisations have different approaches to sustainability, many of those will actually have some reference to the SDGs within their plans, and have made some efforts to link to the SDGs in their programme. However, the whole importance piece for me, though, is quite simple. If we just go on to the next slide. In the sense that, very much from my own point of view and what we've been doing in VolkerWessels UK over the past 15 years, we all know it's the right thing to do. It's unquestionable. It's ever present, and it's very much the sort of moral and ethical test of a business, ensuring that they're putting this at the forefront of their strategic programs. So there's not really any question for us of why we're doing it. The challenge really comes around the how. Next slide, please. So the big question, and the first question is, what is sustainability, or actually what is sustainability to your organisation? Personally, I've seen the definition of sustainability change, grow, flex so much over the past 10, 15 years, developing from the traditional sort of triple bottom line explanation into a much broader explanation of what sustainable business management is. And I thought actually I'd just take a moment just to quote. I've got the latest IOS journal, safety journal. I'm just going to read this first paragraph. And it says, sustainable business management is often described as balancing benefits to people and the environment with the traditional corporate imperative of generating financial profit and shareholder value. But if you were to judge the weight of each priority according to the space it is given in most organisations' annual sustainability reports, there are commonly dozens of pages on environmental management for every one on human resources, health, safety and well-being. You would conclude that the balance has been upset somewhere. So it's interesting, from my point of view, and mirrors some of the debates that we've had in our organisation about the strategy I'm about to come on to, is that sustainability in business is a much wider thing. And any organisation, regardless of size, with a revisiting strategy or starting afresh, needs to have that debate first. And we certainly had that within our board meetings to establish what was framed by sustainability. Next slide, please. So we've just launched a strategy for the next 10 years. This is available on our website. I'm going to kind of give like the overview of the structure around this. We frame it around people, planet and purpose. And I'll put that into context at the end of this session. But it was very important that we establish a methodology that was very simple and straightforward. It's on the face of it, it could be argued it could be more challenging, but we wanted to start somewhere simple. And over the next few months and years, we will develop the strategy to do more, whilst at the same time doing a lot more in the background in addition to the headlines that are in the strategy itself. Next slide, please. So as you can see here on the this slide, it shows the pillars that we have on the left. But on the right, you can see the broad spectrum of topics that we've then encompassed in our strategy. And there was a significant debate about the safety and wellbeing element. But we felt that it was important to include all of that aspect because, as referencing the Irish magazine again, it's not just about the planet, it is about the people, and it's not just about people within the community, it's about our own people as well. And so we came up with this framework with all of these themes so that we could encompass everything and also ensure that we were having, in some ways, a very singular method of reporting. So we now have separate reports for different subjects, as you might find elsewhere with other organisations. Next slide, please. So we ensured that, the themes that you had on the previous slide, everyone has its owner, and there's targeted actions around it. They very much challenge what we do. They are designed to set ambitious targets, look at emerging best practice, and particularly very important for us as a large organisation, to share the learning. There's lots of people. We have a very good workforce, lots of very committed employees, always trying new things. And as our biggest challenges, I think, in terms of communications, are gathering all the things that are being done and then sharing that internally and to our stakeholders. And we also felt it was important, the last point there, that the themes and what supports them is a mix of both qualitative and quantitative measures. Not everything can be explained by a number, and we needed to ensure that we had that softer element covered off as part of the strategy. Next slide, please. Within that also, looking at how we manage social value and looking at new ways of capturing that information, and as I said, trying to improve the way that we get that information from across our business. So we're just developing a new platform with Thrive CSR, and looking at how we can improve and expand engagement within the education arena and volunteering, making it more accessible to a wide range of people, and then also in the same place looking to gather more and more information around social value. Because we're doing so much, probably one of our biggest challenges, as I said, over the past 15 years has actually been about flying the flag and actually demonstrating what we're actually doing around this subject. Next slide, please. Here, just as I sort of draw to a close on my part, looking at what we seek to achieve, and you can see there on the left, this is lifted straight from some of our core sort of business ethos and on our websites. You can see there in the speech, it's not a bubble, it's a rectangle, I guess. We talk about being sustainable, and we're talking very much around a sustainable business model that encompasses all aspects of our strategy. And our CEO, Alan, very much recognises this and ensures that it's the forefront of our discussions, and we're always pushing the boundaries around these things. And it's not just because we're looking to tick boxes for our clients. Next slide, please. So this is the framing piece, just to close. It's not just about the right thing to do, but it's about it being done with integrity and for all the right people. When I say the right people, it's not just doing it for our clients. Our industry is very good at moving with client needs, but we also need to ensure that we're doing it for our staff as well, because we don't sell structures, buildings, roads, marine activities through our websites. We're not like an Amazon through our website. We are very much repurposing our strategies and looking at website for our own people and also our future employees. And I always like this quote from Karen Miller-Kovac, who's I think chief scientist behind the Weight Watchers program. And really, for me, it really hits home about how people engage with these programs, and it's very much connected to how they feel about that aspect, that change and perception of it being worthwhile, and also determining that it's achievable. So it's very important that any strategies are both stretching but also very achievable at the same time. Next slide. I had a timer just in case. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, and I look forward to some questions later.
Adrian, thank you so much for that amazing piece of scene setting and telling us more about what VolkerWessels UK have been up to. It really completely aligns with what we always talk about at the Planet Mark, about people and planet. And I think next up we're going to hear from Philippa. Hi Philippa.
Hiya.
I'm going to hand over to you.
Okie dokes. All right, if you could, yeah, brilliant. Let's start off with that slide. So, as I previously said, Chetwoods is an architect's practice, and what we think our USP is that we have these three facets as part of the brand that all work together to create architecture that really covers the triple bottom line. So, we've got studio, which is where all of the imagination comes from, the testing, the sort of social side, and then we've got works, which is about technology, so looking at BIM, AI, VR, and we're actually looking at digital twins as well. And then Thrive is my remit, so I believe it's the sort of ethics behind the company and the environmental and the health and well-being aspect. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So sustainability isn't new to Chetwoods. We've been pretty pioneering prior to me even joining. Over the last 20 years, we've delivered some world firsts. One of those on the top right is the world's first BREEAM Excellent for supermarket. And on the left-hand side, we've got the digital hub, which started looking at sort of early biophilic ideas, which is something that's kind of more a la mode at the moment, so it gives you a bit of an idea of some of the buildings we've been involved with, but we're going to talk about Thrive. So next slide. So this is our remit. I'm a qualified architect, so obviously our expertise is in project delivery, but what we're finding is that we're actually helping to embed a sustainability vision for businesses, and also we can do the same for product design. Because we're holistic thinkers, we think we can sort of cover off a lot of different areas, and we're starting to look into helping companies understand what ESG is, environmental social governance, and how we can help them report. And on the right hand side, you'll see some of the organisations that we're affiliated with. We are a Planet Mark accredited company. I'm a WELL accredited professional, and obviously I said about the seconded role at the UK Green Building Council. We're involved in the Circular Economy Club, and also everything we do is aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also there's the additional pledges for the architecture community at the moment, which is the RIBA 2030 Climate Challenge and the Architects Declare movement. So we've got a lot of badges there, and we're working hard to do our best as a business. So next slide. So obviously we've all heard from climate scientists as to why we need to act, and obviously it is a no-brainer that we need to act, but if anyone needed any further convincing, obviously the financial sector are really pushing this as well now, because they realise that it is a risk to not consider it, and we want to avoid stranded assets in the future. And Mark Carney is one of those people that have really pushed the agenda to make sure that it's being considered as part of the economy as well. So next slide. So we think the value is clear, and what we've tried to do is identify what the values are to the different stakeholders of a project to help them really understand what sustainability means to them. So yeah, you can see to the left hand side, you know, what the values would be to the investor, developer and customer. Next slide. So what we do at Thrive, and you know, we're talking about how we help businesses here to start off with, and typically the businesses that we're working with are property professionals and developers, because we feel like the fact that we're qualified architects help us set the vision and get engaged with clients early enough to be able to really implement a good strong vision, and we help them to be able to report better on the good stuff that they are doing. So first of all, what we do is identify sustainability stakeholders, so those that have responsibility in decision making, and those could be people that you wouldn't necessarily think would be key. But you can see the diagram to the right hand side, you know, the sort of people that would be involved. And then we'd assess the value chain of the business in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that would run right from investment to the end of life of the product that the business make. And then we provide bespoke tools to ensure that those goals are met and to ensure that the vision is set throughout that whole value chain. And we also identify, obviously, the key accreditations that the business could go for. So planet marks there, and there's a few others. Obviously, people will be aware of BREEAM, and just to really embed the vision throughout the value chain. Okay, next slide. So what we've done recently is we've been involved in a project that is the world's first building verified as net zero carbon for construction. Bit of a mouthful, but I need to say that. And you know, one of the first things we did is identify that the UK Green Building Council net zero carbon buildings framework was a key tool to be able to enable that. You can see the bottom left hand side, there's a bit of the diagram showing the process of how you pick a net zero carbon scope, and then how you'd reduce carbon throughout the process. And the case study on the right, which is Magnitude 314, that we helped get this title for, that had the Planet Mark new development accreditation on that. So it had a life cycle analysis done, and we found out that the building was 25% less embodied carbon than standard logistics building. And it did involve offsetting as well at the moment, because this is a net zero carbon for construction building. So operations couldn't be taken into consideration. And the offsetting scheme had benefits for 10 out of the 17 SDGs. So it highlights that it's not just about carbon, it's also about the social. Next slide, please. So one of the bespoke tools that we use on all projects to help us explain what sustainability is, as Adrian said, sustainability has become a bit of a overused word in the past, and it can be sort of defined in many different ways. We define sustainability through these design drivers, which are based on the EU levels criteria, which is a sort of baseline number of themes that need to be included in all accreditation schemes for buildings. So we feel like these are really solid themes to look at on each scheme. So we've got carbon control, which is obviously about mitigation, about reducing your emissions up front. Then we've got water, which is one that seems to be forgotten quite a lot, but it's actually crucial, and it does have its own carbon footprint as well. Resources, which is looking at things like circular economy, really reducing, then reusing, then recycling, then botting. Then we've got the health and wellbeing aspect. As I said before, we're well accredited professionals, so it's looking at getting those principles embedded in all buildings, whether we go for the accreditation or not. Resilience is the other bookend, so it's more about adaptation, because you know we're already in a situation where we're seeing the effects of the climate crisis. Biodiversity, again, we're seeing the effect of ecology loss, and so we need to impact this and really hopefully target biodiversity net gain on our developments. And then value and cost, because that can't be forgotten, and we do remind clients of what the value and cost is of all of these. It might not necessarily just be monetary, but there's other benefits. So yeah, we use these, and they link back to the UN Sustainable Development Goal themes as well. So I'll show how these have been applied to Magnitude on the next slide. So you can see there's quite a few things that we've managed to hit on this building. So solar thermal, preheated for hot water, so it's got solar thermal panels. It's PV and battery storage ready, so that will be down to the occupier obviously to take them up on that. Electric vehicle charging, hybrid air source heat pumps, lift share app on site. Then with water, rainwater harvesting for toilets and irrigation. For resources, one of the main ways we managed to save so much embodied carbon is by reducing the cement in the concrete and replacing it with GGBS. Then Wellbeing, a few examples, I won't run through all of them, but there's a building environmental analytics system actually as part of this building, which can monitor things like lighting conditions, can monitor movement, etc., to make sure that the space is being used well, and that can be fed back and they can make changes to improve health and well-being. For resilience, sustainable urban drainage, which is a crucial one, and things like they have a G-Hive project, which is an apiary project, where they have bees on site and they collect honey, which is brilliant. We need lots of pollinators. And then obviously with the value, obviously as part of integrating these innovations, we'd hope that it would create a really positive environment for workers, and we'd hope that there'd be good productivity levels, staff retention and reduced absenteeism. 90% of a business's costs are due to HR, so hopefully there'd be savings for an occupier there, and the operational costs are predicted to be reduced by 26.9% compared to the standard baseline, and hopefully we could work with the occupiers to get that down even lower. So yeah, that's next slide then. So that gives you a bit of an overview of how we've tried to make sustainability simple for that case study. Here are a few of our a bit of our outputs recently. So we've got the Thrive approach, which explains a little bit more about the design drivers and why those are important. We've got a guide on ESG, what it's about and why we think it's important, and then we've also got our own Thrive Inside guide for those that are working from home that want to apply some well principles. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Philippa. Amazing to hear about all the firsts, the project firsts you've been involved with, and also really interesting to see all the different frameworks you're aligning with to make sure that everything's coming together and is, as you say, simple. As simple as it can be. So really, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've noticed a few questions coming in the chat, so that's amazing. Thank you so much. Keep them coming. And we're now going to hear from our last speaker, Naomi. So Naomi, over to you.
Hi, thanks very much. I feel like my thunder has been stolen a little bit because I'm going to repeat some of the things that have already been said, but that's all good because obviously we're all finding the same thing. As I introduce myself, I'm Naomi Warr, the Group Environmental Manager for Mclaren Construction. A little bit about Mclaren Construction, if you don't already know, they've been an incredibly successful company over quite a short period of time. So they were established in 2001. We have over 700 colleagues and we have over a 650 million turnover. And at any one time, we have between sort of 25 and 30 projects, all sorts of residential, commercial, industrial, logistics, retail, education. So a bit of a mixed bag there, just to give you a bit of insight into what we do. Okay, so today I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our journey so far. So it became apparent, I've been with the company for a couple of years now, and it became apparent that we sort of had two strands to what I would call sort of environmental sustainability management within the company. And we seem to be very au fait with the As you can see, the top strand, so the lighter orange there, the construction environmental compliance, sort of don't spill stuff, use a drip tray, you know, don't kill animals and wildlife. And that tends to be sort of fairly standard stuff. People understand it. We understand the legal requirements around that. And clients assume to a degree that that's a given. You know, you don't really get asked too much about this. You know, this is standard practice. Whereas the bottom strand, so the orange at the bottom, we found that there seemed to be less understood. So the fact that we were interested in our resource use and our impact reduction in terms of CO2 emissions, how much waste went to landfill, how much we were recycling, etc., where the materials were coming from, how sustainable they were. And that seemed to be less understood. And there were questions of, well, you know, why do we need to know this? Do we need to record it? Is it a legal requirement? What's the benefit for us in doing it? Unfortunately, my picture is over the other bit where the arrows are pointing to. But basically, the answer to those questions is, well, you know, we have a management system, ISO 14001. Okay, it's not a legal requirement to have ISO 14001, but it's recently been developed. And two of the key things that are included in there is stakeholder interests. So stakeholders are now very interested in our performance, much more so now over the last sort of 10 years, really, it's been increasing. And this requirement, well, the shift from just legal compliance, so looking at what you're required to do legally, but shifting it towards what are your compliance requirements? And your compliance requirements also include your stakeholder interests and expectations. And your stakeholders could be the person, you know, the neighbour to the project that you're working on. It could be an investor in the business. So it could be one of your colleagues that you work with. What are they interested in? And that is something that we should be obviously taking on as important. And they're interested in this. There is also legislative requirements now, not quite as much as the strand above, but you'll be familiar with the ESOS and the streamlined energy carbon reporting requirements. And obviously there are a number of companies that are required to report a CSR report, which would include some of this data. So there's definitely a driver for the bottom strand, but we found that it was less understood. Sorry, could you flip back, Kendall? Sorry. On the smart waste, you can see a reference there to smart waste. We use smart waste to record as a platform for our data, which I'll come back to later on. Okay, ready for the next slide. So we started to develop our corporate responsibility strategy. We have three main policies, which obviously support the IMS policy as well, so they link in together. The one we're going to focus on today is the planet policy, but we have planet, people, community. The planet policy covers main headings, looking at resource consumption, obviously, promoting environmentally responsible design and operations, and driving the cultural change. So we saw those things as key for us moving forward with that sort of understanding and improving our performance on that bottom strand. Okay, ready for the next slide? Yeah. So our planet policy, just to drill down a little bit further into this, minimising our resource consumption. So we're looking at obviously reducing our carbon emissions, looking at our waste. So not just things like diversion from landfill, but we're interested in recycling rates as well. So we want to eliminate as much waste as we can, and we want to look at recycling rates as well. So not just the fact that it's not going to landfill. Also looking at energy efficiency and water efficiency technologies that we can use in construction operations, and any influence we can have with the client on that. The next one, promote environmental responsible design and operations. So the first point being, from a compliance point of view, or sort of box standard understood, sort of don't pollute, don't spill. We don't just want to be minimum requirements. We want to be best practice, good and best practice management techniques. We're looking at materials. So there are certain materials that we require standard that should be coming with sustainability certification. So there's 4 main ones that we look at on all projects, which would be your concrete, your steel, your timber is a given, and your aggregate. And then project specifically, anything else that's required by sustainability certification schemes that they may be required to achieve. So things like BREEAM, WELL, etc. Obviously, we want to promote innovative design, procurement and construction methods. I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail later on, and provide some comprehensive environmental analysis of the project. So we found that when we started on this journey, certainly with Smart Waste, that Smart Waste is a great tool. It's only as good as the data that you put in. So you really do need the data to look at in order to tell the story and see where you're going, how you're doing, what you need to do differently. And the last one, drive a cultural change, which I think is massively important, to provide our colleagues with environmental training and knowledge base. And I'll tell you a little bit more about some things we've done there. Working with our supply chain, which the other speakers mentioned too. It's key getting them involved as early as possible and partnering with them really. And a biggie is publishing regular case studies. So projects, we found that a lot of projects were doing a lot of things, but we didn't know about them because we're not very good at telling each other about what we've been doing. So that was a big issue for us. And obviously case studies, that information helps us to demonstrate to our clients that we are doing what we say we're going to do. You know, they don't just want general statements about our sustainability. They want us to prove it, and that's right. You know, we should have to prove that what we say we're doing, we are doing. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next one. So this one, we've done a number of things, but what I wanted to focus on today was one particular project that we've been working on over the last year. And it's called our Sustainability On-Site package. And what it consists of is basically, I've lost my slide. That's it, yeah. So what it consists of basically is an initial workshop, a compliance and performance review visits, additional visits as required depending on what the project needs are, and a pre-finished visit to review the performance data collection for the project and to help them with things like sustainability certifications such as BREEAM, LEED, WELL, and the completion of a case study for each project that has sort of positives, negatives, the learning, the sharing, so that we can use that going forward, and we can use that internally. We can also use it as part of our tendering process as examples of what we have done. So we started on this journey with the Sustainability On-Site package last July, and so every new project that we start now has to go through the support package, and I say has to. We've had positive feedback from it. It's been good. So most of our sites that are now running have had an initial workshop, and that initial workshop on site, we try and do it as early as possible, because obviously the earlier you do it, the more opportunities that you have for sustainability. And we deliver the workshop to a set invite list. So we need the project lead, the design representative, procurement, operations, and the administrative colleagues there. plus obviously whoever is the nominated environmental coordinator for that project. And that's key to ensure that there's a good discussion, and you know, opportunities are discussed fully. You know, procurement can give their input to something that maybe operations have identified as an idea, and we can see whether it's a goer or not. So again, we tend to, as you can see, some things that have come up on the screen. So we'll have discussions around the opportunities for how can we save carbon on the job, what can we do for water, what can we do for waste. So some of the things that have come up, and I think Philippa and Adrian have mentioned some of these already. So the big hitters are your concrete, your steel, and your aggregates. So obviously, if there are any opportunities there for us, we'll try and grab those. Things like low carbon concrete mix possibilities. I think Philippa mentioned the GGBS cement replacement options. I think the problem we have with that is potentially we're not involved early enough in the project, so a lot of those opportunities sometimes are missed for us. But again, that's something that we can work with the clients on if we can partner up with them and get involved earlier on. What else have we got? Timbers are given. I think there can be some fairly simple things to look at. So things like your generator use, you know, how quickly can you get onto mains power? If you're using a generator, are you using the right size generator? I know it sounds all fairly simple stuff, but these things use huge amounts of fuel. So any opportunities there, things like LED lighting, fairly simple. Temporary lighting, there's a lot of LED lighting around. Rainwater harvesting, there's a lot of opportunities for that. Certainly for dust suppression, we've done a lot of dust suppression using rainwater, and sort of ballast, the barriers and things like that. I suppose it's having the opportunity to look at, see if there's any alternative possible materials to the ones that you have in the design. So some of the things that we sort of already do or have done over the last year, we've had a lot of projects where we've reused spoils under a CLARE materials management plan. We've done a lot of rainwater harvesting and use. We try to use pod and prefabrication elements where we possibly can. LED lighting we've been quite successful with. We've reviewed a number of our waste contractors, so we're trying to achieve better, not just diversion from landfill, but also recycling, improve our recycling rates rather than recovery of that waste. What else have I got here? Oh yes, key thing to tell you about is also to support this package, we've also produced quite a comprehensive half-day workshop for our design and procurement colleagues, which has been delivered across the group. And that's delivered by our sustainability consultant engineer. And that gives a lot more detail about material alternatives and the reasons why certain materials or alternatives would be more sustainable and how those opportunities could be identified and what changes might be available on certain projects. Okay, so I think we can go to the last slide. So in summary, what have we learned? Well, the earlier the better for us. So there are more opportunities the earlier we get involved, because I think Philippa said, obviously at the design stage, there's a lot of opportunities to be had there. And if we can help the client to realise those opportunities, then that's great for us and that's great for them. We have a lot of projects saying, well, we've missed the opportunity, we haven't got the influence here. But then we should still look at that opportunity and put it forward to the client and say, look, we possibly could have done this here. Let's look at it for the next project. So just because we've missed an opportunity doesn't necessarily mean that it is a missed opportunity. You may be able to, and that may help us in the future, when the client goes, actually, we need to look at this. Mclaren's offered us these solutions. Let's go back to Mclaren. So from our point of view, it's a business strategy as well. And the same with us in terms of our supplier. Our supplier is key, so we need to get our suppliers involved as early as we can. We've started producing a directory of projects and services, so that sort of helps with the support of our support package. And you know, as I said before, we're doing lots of things that we didn't necessarily realise that we're doing. We're not necessarily sharing them. We've had a couple of clients on some of our workshops as well, which has been really good. And we're currently tendering for a project where we've had our sustainability consultant engineer looking at providing carbon savings within the tender. So we're sort of doing that, and we're waiting for feedback on that. So I know you're itching to finish, aren't you? I'm nearly there. So
yeah,
I just
thank you so much. Sorry, it's only so we have enough time because we've had loads of questions coming in. So I'll let you finish, but I'm keen to make sure we get through some of the questions.
I'm nearly there, honestly. Sorry.
Thanks, Naomi.
Okay, no problem. So lastly, why Planet Positive? Because obviously we are recording our data, and you can see that we've got the Smart Waste platform. Well, we saw Planet Mark. It gives our systems credibility, and it's that age-old, you know, you could have the best systems in the world internally, but how do you prove that to people unless somebody actually assesses it? And clients don't want to assess it. They want someone, you know, they want some credible certification or mark to show them that is a credible system. So Planet Mark gives us that. They're also linked to good educational and forestry projects, which we were keen on being involved in. It helps us with our internal data, so an incentive to get the data, as well as the legal requirements. And COVID, you know, we're all familiar with COVID now, and that's, as the previous speaker said, is going to bring about build better. Investors are going to be interested in sustainability. You know, sustainability is going to become higher up on the agenda. We've got the zero carbon, you know, net biodiversity gain, all of that, plastic, circular economy, it's all been mentioned this morning. It's all key to this sustainability journey. And I'm finished. Sorry, I went over. Somebody had to.
Thanks, Naomi. It's okay. I've just also seen that Adrian's been answering some of the questions.
Okay, cool. That's good then. Yeah.
In the chat. So thank you so much, Adrian, for picking up some of those. I've seen actually you've been firing away answers, so that's awesome. But I'd love to invite Philippa and Adrian to come back and we can go through some of these questions. We've got some great ones coming in. So thank you so much, Naomi. Really interesting. So, and also just to say, any questions that we don't have time to answer now, we can pull together and follow up with in the follow-up email. So we'll try and get through some of them there as well. So first question for Philippa, actually, very popular one. So how did Chetwoods convince the board to go down the zero carbon route?
Cool. So I'm presuming when we say board, we're talking about the client that we're working with on that case study. And what I can say is it was very easy to convince them because they, because of the financial sector being in support of this movement towards net zero carbon, there are a lot of reporting schemes such as the GRESB benchmark and GLP actually report to GRESB. So they felt a bit of pressure to, you know, make sure that they're demonstrating their vision through that, but also it's really competitive in the logistics sector. It's something that they're all clambering over each other to get the next headline and actually, you know, not just the headline, but actually achieve the vision and demonstrate that they've done it. So for this case, it was very simple. I can imagine that obviously in other cases it would be a little bit more difficult, but happy to chat to anyone about it, you know, further on in the networking about how you could do it for different sectors.
Thanks, Philippa. Super interesting. And as you mentioned, Philippa will be joining us in the networking session afterwards. So if you want to ask more questions on that, then please feel free. So we've got a question from Scott Armstrong. Hi, Scott. Are water boreholes considered commonly in new build projects? He says, I mean here as ongoing supply to the final building to take impact off the grid. So a bit of a technical one there. I'm going to throw it out to anyone who wants to pick it up, actually.
Just checking that question again now.
They are on occasion. I do know they're a fact. I mean, and there's been for some time. Certainly, when we built our head office back in 2007, we actually had although we built it ourselves, it was our head office. We did actually put a borehole in for that. In terms of the actual opportunity to specify them on new builds in general, I can't comment, but I know it is something that is picked up on occasion, certainly.
Thanks, Adrian. And also maybe one we could quite a technical one. Maybe we could follow up as well in our email afterwards. Thank you, Scott, for that. So again, from an anonymous attendee, but how will, so this is again one for Philippa, how will Chetwoods stay on track over the years of disruptive change when it comes to net zero?
Of course, I'm presuming disruptive change is pandemic, etc. The fact is that we need to constantly reassess. I think there's a general perception that you have to be perfect or not bother. And so, you know, with net zero, by following the UK Green Building Council framework, we will assess building by building how we achieve that, and it could well be that in some cases the embodied carbon can't be reduced as much as we'd like because of other factors, and therefore, you know, it would be a case of considering whether we might have to mitigate a little bit more through offsetting, through accredited offsetting. Obviously, we'd want to avoid offsetting altogether. It's the absolute last resort, but at the moment, realistically, it's the only way forward on buildings to get net zero carbon, unless you were looking at producing a district energy element as part of the building to offset through providing energy to the community, or whether you're looking at a building that is completely built out of natural materials that have sequestered carbon. So you need to assess performance as well. So it's kind of, as Adrian was saying, sustainability needs to be considered from the viewpoint of different businesses and from different processes. And the brief comes first. It needs to perform and function as a building before we then look at different means of getting to net zero. But following that process, we keep reviewing building by building.
Thanks, Philippa. And I know, Naomi, you mentioned COVID and how that's affected and remaining resilient to that. And you talked through loads of amazing examples about what you've been doing. I don't know if any of those feel particularly relevant when it comes to addressing the disruptive changes we've all kind of been facing, particularly around COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's just going to emphasise you know, our need as a contractor to demonstrate what we're actually doing. You know, I don't think we have to show examples, and we have to have our performance data, and we have to have examples of what we've been doing in projects. And like Philippa says, you know, we're not all perfect, but we have to do something. And if you don't start somewhere, you're never going to travel along that journey and improve. So I think that would be my advice to anyone is, you know, get the easy wins first and just keep plugging away at it and keep going. Yeah,
absolutely. And then exactly as you say, and then as Philippa said, once you've done all of that, then you can come on to the offsetting at the end as the last.
Exactly,
last resort, always. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think offsetting has its place. I think offsetting on its own is not great. I think maybe you're hiding behind pretending that you're bothered. Maybe that's a bit unfair. Whereas I think if you use offsetting to support your strategy and action, then obviously your offsetting as you improve is going to get less, and your improvements are going to become more. So that I see that as a good way of moving forward.
Thanks both. And I suppose on another sort of technical but probably a definition led question. So question open to the floor. Could you distinguish between carbon neutrality and net zero? Adrian, I wonder if maybe you want to pick this one up.
Thanks.
Sorry, throw you under the bus there.
It's a good question, and it's probably, dare I say, probably a little bit tongue in cheek, because I think this is one of the problems, and it's a bit like the sustainability definition, that people can bend these topics, these definitions to suit their needs. I mean, I was just checking something. You've got Microsoft coming to, they want to be carbon negative by 2030. So you've got neutral, you've got zero, you've got negative. And I think the key thing really is, whilst there's an ongoing search for clarity around what these are, I think you do have to take them all into account. But it comes back to my point about organisations. There is a lot of science around these areas. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but actually you just need to focus on what's important for you. So there's a lot of discussion going on around net zero carbon and what that is. You know, I think Philippa mentioned about, low carbon concrete. You know, that seems to be the main thing that the air industry is talking about. And it's really, I think it's about making small steps. It is about, again, like what was said a moment ago, taking those quick wins and then, determining what's appropriate for you and framing that all within your own carbon journey, so to speak.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And actually, I know that I think the concrete is something that all of you touched on as well. So really interesting on a specific point there as well. Thanks for picking that on up, Adrian. Cool. And we've actually got one last question, which was, I think, open to the floor, but specifically around Chetwoods as well. And what are the challenges when tackling net zero? How has Chetwoods tackled them? So maybe Philippa, if you could lead, and then sure. Adrian and Naomi, if you have any final thoughts.
I think it was kind of insinuated generally throughout the presentations, but basically, if you do not have an engaged supply chain and you do not have a clear vision from the client that runs throughout the project, you will end up with a project that could have got to net zero, but probably end up with more offsetting because the easy wins at the beginning would have been missed. So things like the GGBS, etc. So there are several things that we can do to get this embedded in the supply chain. Obviously, I'm from a different position because I'm an architect, so I get involved with the client very early on and we can help to build the vision. But it can't just be net zero carbon in a appointment document or in a tender bit. It's got to be something that actually is understood by the client properly. And the way that we do that is actually we've created eco template workshops with the supply chain and just have these running almost like CPD sessions or workshop sessions with different members, so subcontractors, research bodies, etc., that kind of run along parallel to construction projects to make sure all of these simple things that sometimes even they save money. And this is the thing, like when you consider it early enough, it's not more expensive in some cases. Orientating the building in the right position can save you masses of energy. So it's just things like this. It's about having a cohesive vision, and everyone in that supply chain needs to understand the vision, and the client needs to hammer it. I think that's what I'd say.
Amazing. Thank you, Philippa. And I suppose Naomi and Adrian, I'm sure that you have, if you have anything you would like to add, please do. We've got 1 minute left. I'm aware of timings, everyone's got very busy schedules, so please do add anything if you would like, but I'm going to request a short answer if possible.
Well, I think Philippa summed it up there. Yeah, early involvement and capital costs, really. I think we've got to get away from that sort of upfront costs and think about whole project, whole lifetime costs. And then, you do see the savings then.
Thanks, Naomi.
Yeah, I guess a brief one for me is stop talking about it and do something. I think there's a danger that we're talking about, and I was talking about today, but there's a danger that you'll talk about net zero carbon, and then you'll meet again and talk about net zero carbon, and then you'll meet again and talk about net zero carbon, and in the meantime you'll have achieved nothing. So in some respects it is just going off and and doing what you probably know is the right thing to do in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Action is key. Thank you so much, Naomi, Philippa, Adrian. Really, I think we got through all the questions as well, which is a first. I don't think that's ever happened. So thank you. That's incredible. I think just very quickly from us in terms of next steps, if you'd like to join the networking session afterwards, I've just posted a link to the Zoom meeting, so we have to transfer to another Zoom meeting afterwards. But if anyone would like to join us, please use that link, and we'll be going over there in a minute. And we'll just have 30 minutes of networking for those who would like to join us. Just so I can get a very quick idea how many people might be interested, I've just launched a poll. Sorry, I know I've gone over by 1 minute, but if you could vote in that poll, it will give us an idea of how many people we might expect. Okay, great. Okay, sorry, I can see the votes coming in. So we've got 82% saying yes, they would love to, but they've got a meeting, they can't, so maybe next time, and only 1 for a yes, count me in. So maybe whoever voted yes, count me in, I'll join, and we can, and I think Philippa's going to come, we can have a little chat, and everyone can be prepared next time for the networking. Follow-up details and contact details on this slide, but all that remains to be said from us is thank you so much to our speakers today. These webinars are only what they are because of the amazing people we get on to speak on them. So thank you so much, Naomi, Philippa and Adrian, and thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.